Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on the BFI YouTube channel for this week's Scene interview. My name is Tom Hermawan. I'm a BFI Film Academy young programmer, and I'm so excited to be hosting this week's interview as we enter a brand new season of Scene. This season is beyond human and explores films with non-human subjects, unfamiliar realms, and otherworldly elements to see what they can tell us about ourselves and our own world. And I'm delighted to be joined by animator and director Ida Melum to discuss her award-winning film, Night of the Living Dead. Ida is a Norwegian stop-motion animator and graduate of the National Film and Television School, which is where she directed her first film, Night of the Living Dead. The film is a comedic exploration of a very relatable experience, being kept up at night, haunted by your most embarrassing and shameful memories. But what's fascinating is the way the film represents this, using visuals that reference the horror genre. So dreamscapes and looming shadows and monstrous figures are all used and then subverted by the film's comedic tone and endearing ending, which I think aligns perfectly with this season of Beyond Human. I'm so excited to learn more about this film and gain some insight into Ida's career as a filmmaker and an animator. So please welcome in Ida Melum. Hi, Ida. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for, such a great introduction as well.
Thank you for joining us. It's so nice to have you here because I love the film. It was honestly like a
Mm.
beautiful, beautiful film. And the online response is clear that everyone else does as well. So I'm just
Oh,
really excited
thank
to learn
you.
more about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Thank you so much.
so we can get started with the first question.
hmm
So could you just give us a quick introduction of yourself and the film Night of the Living Dead?
Yeah, well, I think you did a pretty good job with the introduction of the film. But yeah, of course, my name is Ida Melum. I'm an animator and director and overall filmmaker. And Night of the Living Dread was sort of my big um first sort of directing debut with a whole team behind it. And it's been a couple of years now. We made this film and well, it was finished in 2021. So yeah, it's been really fun to see how it's been received, and it's already gone sort of above everything I ever hoped and expected. So yeah.
Hmm. So where did the initial idea come from? Like, was it inspired by anything personal?
Yeah, for sure. I struggle with both overthinking, anxiety, and also struggling to fall asleep. And they are quite linked, aren't they? The three of them.
Yeah.
And it just be sort of I knew like the cornerstones of the idea. I knew I wanted someone who struggled to fall asleep. Because I found myself like often, especially in my like mid 20s, I could go to a party and really have a good time, but then I would get home and then there would be one thing I said that would just keep me up at night and sort of like be all consuming of this whole night. And I'm not saying I'm cured of it. I can still do this to today, but it doesn't happen as frequently. But this was sort of like that essence that I wanted to capture in the film,
Mhm.
and like that one thing that could just keep you awake, and it wouldn't just be something quite recent, it could be something years ago. And then I sort of pitched this to my writers. I had two incredible writers, Hannah Kelso and Laura Jane Turnbridge, and they both kind of ran with it and completely got what I was trying to do. And so yeah, together we developed the story.
Mhm. I think that's what's amazing about it. It's so sort of relatable, and the emotions you sort of dig into are so human, like the anxiety and the overthinking and the shame as well. And I was
Mm,
wondering, like from the title of the film to all its imagery, there's a lot of visual tropes from the horror genre, which you
yeah.
use to represent those like human emotions. So where did that idea sort of come into it?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this, trying to remember like where did it actually come from. And to be absolutely honest, I think the idea of horror and a horror theme going out throughout the film was an idea I had a bit of a spur of the moment, just because I'm a horror fan myself. Love horror films. I find them really
Hmm.
entertaining and fun to watch, especially with a group of friends. Um, and so I kind of threw the idea out, just like, what if there's a bit of horror in there, to make it not just another drama. I think I was just really craving for it to be entertaining. Like, I wanted to have a serious topic, and I definitely had something I wanted to say. But as a person, I also really love to entertain, and so I wanted to entertain the audience. And then so this idea of horror came about, and then I think it was with the help of my amazing writers, they sort of made me see how even though maybe it was a bit out of the blue, this idea, like how it really correlated to the underlying subject of the film, like like being alone with your own thoughts when you have anxiety is terrifying, like
Mm.
it's like that is your worst nightmare, being alone in your own head and just like your thoughts just roaming free on a bad day. Like it can be really oh, what's the word, it can just be a bit like it is all consuming basically. So yeah, and then so we spun on that, and then we tried to find other tropes that we could put in there to make it even more horror-esque. But it's also stop motion, so it's not going to be completely terrifying. Like we all
Yeah.
know it's an animation, so we try to have fun with it and try to plan it as much as we could. Yeah.
Because I think the approach to it was really creative as well. Because it's obviously still a comedy, but the visual
Mm.
elements and even the sort of like the poster and the title and what you think you're going into is so different. But
Yeah.
on that also, there's a big aspect of sort of Rudy's interest in marine biology and sea
Mm.
animals. And I was
Mm.
wondering if that was informed by the horror idea, because obviously then you have the creature that's in her room and then the reveal at the end, it all plays into that. So did that come after the horror idea?
That's another good question. And to be honest, I don't really know what came before the other. But I think the reason I ended up on marine biology was because I really cared for Ruby and I wanted other people to care for Ruby. But one thing I love people who are quite nerdy, and um, I really look up to them as well when they can really deep dive into a subject, and I just really wanted Ruby to care for something. And so it became sort of this the ocean and the environment and all of
Mm,
this stuff, and I wanted her to be quite nerdy as a person, and I felt like if she was like a marine biologist she could be a bit more like happy to be in her own space, and um yeah, it sort of fitted her as a person, I think. And but then it and yeah, sorry, like oh, jumping back 1 second, but like um I think the reason, like, it didn't really matter what it was that she cared about. The reason it was so important to see the theme throughout was that for that initial final childhood memory, for it to really land and for us to
mhm,
care and for us to understand why it meant such a big deal to her, even after all these years. That's what we sort of had to see the theme throughout her entire like sort of lifespan, really. And even to this
mhm,
current time and place, she was still surrounded by all of this like um, ocean themes and colors and everything. And so that was definitely um, my production designers. She was brilliant. Millie White, she even hand painted the little like bed sheet, which I think is
mhm.
just stunning when you see at the end. But as your initial question was how it related to the horror theme. I can't remember what came first, and I think it was just a bit of a luck of the draw that we somehow managed to make the octopus like a bit scary and a bit creepy. But I wasn't quite sure how it was gonna land. It was a bit of you were just trying, I think, to fit these two
Mhm.
together, and yeah, we just wanted to try something new, and luckily it sort of all aligned and ended up working pretty well in the end.
Mhm. I do
Does
think they
that
fit
answer
really
your
well.
question, Tom?
No, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They
sorry.
do. They,
Sorry, I feel like I go on tangents and that's not what I mean to do. I'm like stay on
no,
topic.
it's all interesting. It's also good.
Okay, good. Good, good, good.
But no, you're right. They do fit really well together. So that subversion and the switch from like this like tentacle creature, which is already a thing in horror films, then
Mhm.
such the sweet innocent memory works so well, which is why I was so
Yeah.
fascinated to know more. And then so a lot of the film obviously takes place in the dark and is set at night.
Mm.
So were there any sort of difficulties or technical problems of doing stop motion in the dark?
Yeah, well, I found the whole thing quite difficult because it was, I think it was difficult in terms of tone. Like like I told you before, it's stop motion. She looks quite cartoony and she's made out of fabric. There's a limit to how scary this is gonna seem, right?
Mhm.
So, and then in terms of light, how much did we show? How, the darker it is, the more creepy it is. But we also built these beautiful sets, so we also do kind of want to see them. So again, like I had a great team. Like Charlie Jenkins was our DOP, and again Millie White. They worked so well together, and luckily you also have a bit of leeway. You can make things darker in the grade. So it was definitely like, I remember in the grade we would make it slightly darker and then go back and then slightly lighter. It was constant like finding that balance. But one of the really cool things and challenging things was the torch, which is actually a practical light. And so I
Mm.
remember animating that for the first time was super challenging. But the fact that we had a tiny, tiny torch that's about 2 centimeters big and it genuinely works was so cool. I don't think we could have recreated that
Mm.
digitally or in VFX necessarily. So yeah.
So that was a real prop, and all the torch scenes were in camera.
Yeah. That light
And
comes from that little torch.
oh wow! And
I
you
know.
think that was easier than doing it in post?
Um, I think right there and then it's really difficult, but I think it would have had an equal difficult challenge later on digitally. But then again, I don't work in VFX, so I don't know. But
Hmm.
I think it came out great. I really think it was just really impressive, really, that tiny torch worked so
Yeah.
well as it did. So yeah, it was cool.
On that same sort of idea of like the in-camera animation, so the design for Ruby is so sort of like gorgeous and handmade and textured. But then what was the animation for her eyes and her eyebrows? Because I feel like a lot of the comedy comes from her expressions, but they seem to be so like there's so much movement behind them.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so I love so many different types of animation, and I feel like they all have pros and cons. Like for stop motion, one of the pros obviously is that it's handmade and it's got textured and is a physical thing that we see with our eyes that is moving, which is lovely. But then you have 2D that can use something that we call smearing, and things go really quick and like you can morph things. So that's like one of the pros with 2D. And I find myself quite envious of 2D a lot of the time. I find it looks so
Mhm.
cool. They're so free in so many ways. While stop motion with puppets in particularly, it is quite um like a bit locked in. And so I think I was just like, yeah, I was just a bit envious. I was like, oh, I love these little effects that you get from 2D. So I just wanted to apply them to stop motion and also to make the stop motion a bit more quick paced, a bit more cartoony, like translate all of these things that I really love from 2D. And one of them, as you already pointed out, is the big eyes, the big cartoony eyes, that we see more and more of, like with Rick and Morty. And yeah, you can go on like the big cartoony
Yeah.
eyes, the little dots. And we just see so much more of them. And I wanted that for my stop motion. I was like, how can I make this more cartoony? I think that was sort of the goal for it. And you can see little snippets of where the eyes are, what we call smearing, and moving quite quickly. And that was just to get the things of 2D that I love into the stop motion world as fast as we could, at least.
Yeah. Well, I do have another question, but I feel like you kind of answered it. It was sort of how the comedy is obviously in the script and it's written brilliantly, but it's also in the animation. And
Mm.
I'm not sure if you've worked much in live action, but I was wondering whether you thought the medium of stop motion makes comedy easier or harder to create.
Oh, um, you know what? I think comedy is difficult overall. Like I think whatever medium, like I have so much respect and admiration for comedy. I used to think that it was like super easy. I thought comedy, like making people laugh, is like super easy, or like a happy ending is the easy way out. But today, like I look at those two things so differently. I think comedy is
Mm.
so tricky to get right. Getting a whole audience in a cinema to laugh, that's just like that's so impressive. There's so many things that need to be aligned for that to happen. And same with a happy ending, making that feel like it's justified and earned. Again, so tricky. So I don't know whether stop motion necessarily makes comedy easier or more difficult. You definitely have more control in many ways, but I think comedy overall is challenging in itself.
Yeah.
But it's something I just really admire. And again, my writers are naturally really funny. So I had a great foundation. And then I think it's just about animation pushing that even further as well. Yeah. Is that an okay answer?
Yeah, yeah. While you're doing the stop motion animation then, so frame to frame, do you have to consider like what would be the most comedic, if that makes sense? Like, is this something you consider as you're going through the process?
Yeah, like we sort of act out the scenes before we animate them. And
Hmm.
so, but even that, like they say, there's this classical saying that animation is making a film like 10,000 times over and over again. It's because we um we work on what we call the animatic for so long, and the animatic is basically just a storyboard on the timeline. So we have this really crude, low quality version of our film. Um,
Hmm.
and they do say that, you know, if you can already make people laugh at that stage, then it's just going to be even better once you've animated the shot. And so, yeah, I think it's just about acting out the scenes. Obviously, you get your references, and if I don't feel like I'm getting it right, I ask my friends to help me out and act it out. And then we sort of, I guess, we choose what makes us laugh the most. And then hopefully that would also make an audience laugh.
Nice. So you've already mentioned quite a few names of people that also worked on the film, but generally, how collaborative was this film? Like, how many people worked on it, and how long did it take from that initial idea you had to the finished product?
Yeah. It was super collaborative, but I also think that's due to me and how I work. I am naturally collaborative. It's because I feel like um, when you are so spoiled, you get people who are experts in their field. If you let them do their work, it's just going to elevate everything, right? And I think I'm just so highly aware that I can't do it all. So, yeah, but I also love it. I love collaborating. I think it's, even though it can be difficult and it's hard to maybe please everybody, and sometimes there's too many opinions, in the grand scheme of things, I think it's always gonna make your idea better than if you had just done it on your own,
Hmm.
the way you intended just from the start, you know, without any input at all. So, but yeah, we had about 16 different HODs, and yeah, it was like a mini production basically of the film. So yeah, huge team,
Nice.
and yeah, they all did an amazing job, honestly.
And how long was the whole process altogether, do you think?
Oh God, yeah, it was about a year and a half, maybe.
Oh wow. Is that from the
Mm.
initial idea, like before the script as well?
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh
it
wow.
was, I think around September, October 2019 is when I had the initial cornerstones of the idea, and by Christmas we had the writers on board, and then uh, we finished the film in May 2021. So
Hmm.
yeah, it took a year and 6 months or something like that.
Wow.
And production in itself took about 6 to 7 months as well. So it's, yeah, very time consuming for 11 and a half minutes. But yeah.
I mean, so much work obviously went into that and so much time, but I'd say it's
Yeah.
worth it from the online responses because from everything I've seen, it's resonated with so many people and like the message and the ending especially. So I was just wondering
Yeah.
what your planned sort of message was or intended message when you came up with the film, and then do you think this hugely positive response has changed the way you feel about the film in any way?
Yeah. Oh, good question. Yeah, no, because I think this is a bit inevitable when you work on a film, and also in any creative process overall, whether that's making an album or making a drawing, it could be anything. I feel like a creative process is always like, oh, this is amazing, this is the best idea ever, and then you're gonna hit this like bottom where you're like, no, this is
Mm.
crap. And then before you then go back to, oh wow, you know what, this isn't that bad at all, like I'm actually really proud of this. And for a long time, sadly, yeah, I was not expecting any praise for the film, due to a bit of it just been such a um long process, and also being a bit overworked and everything. So I was really taken aback when we got the response that we did. I just didn't. I think it's also like you make a comedy, and that's really, or you try to make something that's a bit humoristic and funny, and that's just really scary, because animation is telling a joke and then you wait 3 years to see if anyone laughs at it. It's so scary. I think I was just really nervous and didn't really know how I felt about it. And then luckily for us, like, it's just been so well received beyond our wildest imagination. And yeah, it has helped me look at it differently. But I think I would have still felt differently. Or I think what I needed was just time away from it.
Mhm.
Because by the time we finish it, I've just seen it so many times. And I've gone through every single frame, a million
Yeah.
times, and I've given everything to this film. And then so when you're done, you're sort of sad, but you sort of like, I don't want to look at it. And so you do need that little break for
Mhm.
sure, yeah. But I think I'm just grateful, and long answer, but I think what I wanted for people to take away from the film was not to take themselves too seriously, and
Mhm.
that we all do this. We all sort of repeat these flaws and mistakes that we do, and just that, yeah, we should all just be a bit kinder to ourselves, and
Mhm.
yeah, that kind of stuff.
I definitely think that was the message that everyone else got. I got that. It was so
Oh,
beautiful.
good. That's really good to hear.
So moving away from Night of the Living Dead just a little bit, I'm curious to know how you got started in animation, because I know you used to do acting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, I did animation on my own in my basement, as fun, like when I was a kid, and with Legos and plasticine and all of this stuff. So I was sort of introduced to animation at a really young age. And then I also had a huge passion for film and animated films, especially, as I think a lot of our, as like the Disney generation, you know, how could we not?
Mm.
And then I fell into acting as well, which I absolutely loved, and I did that for almost 10 years, and the plan was to be an actress. But by the time I wanted to go to university, that's when I sort of started to think about the realities of trying to become a stage actress, and like how how competitive it is, and how scary it is to constantly be, kind of declined. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can actually handle that. And then I looked into other courses and I came across animation, and it just never occurred to me that you could do this as a professional. I was like, and that my friend was pointing out, like, this sort of combines everything you like media, art, acting. And I was like, yeah. And it really does. It combines everything I love. Yeah, it is time consuming and it's a lot of hard work, but it's so fulfilling. Like, yeah, I absolutely love it.
Mm. And then, like you said, you went to study animation and you worked as an animator. And then I know you went to the National Film and Television School to do
Yeah,
directing for animation. So I was
yeah.
just wondering what the differences between those two roles. So how hands-on are you as the director?
That's a good question. I think it's also a bit tricky because the National Film and Television School, like that course is amazing and you learn so much. Um, but you still sort of animating on your own film. So I think in a bigger production outside in the industry, it's very rare that a director would actually animate on their own film. They would probably
Hmm.
just have be talking to the animators and figuring out the scenes together. And sort of that's the primary role of the animation director, is, or the director is to work with the animators and and get the acting right and have the overall look of the story in the film. So yeah. Oh, sorry. Does that answer? It's a bit of a tricky question, basically, I
Yeah.
think.
But so for this film specifically, then, were you quite hands-on because it's a student film and there's a smaller crew?
Yeah. So because it's
Hmm.
a student film, I was very much hands-on because you obviously we are as close to a real life production as possible in the means that it's all practical. You make a massive film and you have this incredible team. You have every HOD that you could think of, sort of thing. And so it's so realistic in that way. Um, but at the same time, you're also student film, so you are definitely animating on your own film. And
Hmm.
then you're also then building extra puppets where it needs to be built. And so you're wearing a lot of different hats for sure. So yeah, I was definitely hands-on in everything.
Hmm.
But yeah.
But so it sounds like going to film school was a big part of sort of the start of your career in getting into animation filmmaking. So
Yeah,
for those who may be considering it, like young filmmakers who may be thinking about going to film school, would you say it helped with your craft or like getting into the industry maybe?
absolutely. Like, I won't lie, I think it's been great. And I think one of the biggest things is that I made such incredible friends who are not just friends, they're like forever going to be my go-to collaborators. Um, and it's just been so, yeah, it's been so challenging in many ways, but I feel so much more at ease with who I am as a filmmaker. And yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Absolutely. Like, I
Mm.
think if you can and you want to, definitely. It is not the beyond end all recipe to becoming someone in the industry, but I would recommend it for sure.
Nice. And then Night of the Living Dead has obviously had a lot of success since it released, and it's been to loads of film festivals. And it was nominated for a BAFTA and a BIFA. And I was just wondering if you had advice for people that have already made a film and want to get it out there or are applying to film festivals, if there was one piece of
Yeah.
advice you could give.
Yeah, I basically ended up doing the festival run for the film and I had no idea what I was doing. So I think if anything, the advice is just to jump in feet first. I think another thing is to have a think about what you want out of the film. When
Hmm.
we're young and we make our first films, I think one good thing is just to get as many people to see it as possible. So that could be a good strategy to have for your film. Or maybe your strategy is to win certain awards or trying to earn a bit of money on it. So I think have a bit of a think about what you want out of the film. And then I wouldn't be afraid to reach out to festivals. Like, they definitely want to see films, and even though your film might be not be right for them, maybe they can recommend someone else. And I think just like another big tip would be to go to festivals if you can. And also
Hmm.
try and go to festivals on your own, because I was really scared to go on my own. I kind of wanted that crutch of having a friend with me. But every time I went to a film festival on my own, especially where I had a film in the program, I made so many great contacts and I had the best time. Because
Hmm.
when you go on your own, you're forced to make an effort and you're forced to go out to people and talk, even though that it might not be so intuitive. But I ended up having the best time. So yeah, I recommend that.
Amazing. Um, so yeah, we're down to our final question now. It's
Mm.
just, what about you? If you have any upcoming projects or films that you're able to talk about?
Yeah, I am currently mid production or last stretch of production actually on my next stop motion short called Overreacting, which is
Hmm.
about a mid 30s woman who doesn't know whether she wants kids or not. And so she basically gives birth to her reproductive organs. It comes out as a little sidekick, and it's a crazy little adventure between the two of them. So yeah, it's another comedy.
Hmm.
Sounds gory, but I promise it's not. It's quite cute. And so yeah, it's very much very similar to Dread in the same tone and serious topic underneath, but told in an entertaining and hopefully funny way as well. So yeah.
It does sound like it has the same sort of like comedy, but also heart, and like a really important story is being told by it.
Yeah. I feel like
But
it's so crucial, you know, like it needs
mhm.
heart. It needs, you need to have something to say, basically.
Well, that's amazing. I'll be sure to keep an eye out for that when it comes
Yeah.
out. But thank you so much for joining me today and having this chat. It's been so insightful. I've loved learning about your career in this film, and I'm sure everyone watching has as well. So just thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom.
It was really nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for watching. I urge you all to go watch Night of the Living Dread and experience it for yourself because it's such a touching and endearing film, and you're just all gonna love it. And it's available to watch through the BFI Film Academy Instagram bio. But yeah, that about wraps up this week's scene. So thank you all for joining me. The submissions for the BFI Future Film Festival are still open now. It's a wonderful opportunity for young filmmakers to get your film seen, and you can submit through the Film Freeway page until Friday the 13th of September. So make sure you do that as soon as possible. So please come back next week where my fellow BFI Film Academy young programmer, Katia Hiver, is going to be doing her interview with Oscar Chu on his film The Highlands. But other than that, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, Ida, once again, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.